It's Erev Tanis Esther, and I wanted to take this opportunity to share a Purim thought. It's to elaborate a little bit on what I spoke about this past Shabbos at services. I know that many of you were not at services, not able to come. So I wanted to share what I believe is a very significant and inspiring thought. There are two midrashim in regard to the Megillah. They're found in the Medrash of the Megillah Esther. In one, it says on the verse that Haman comes to Achashverosh and says, Im al hamelech tei. If it finds favor in the eyes of the king of Achashverosh, please write a decree, sign it, that we should obliterate and destroy all the Jews in your empire. And the Medrash says that Achashverosh was very much opposed to this. And Achashverosh called in some of his wise sages. And they all said, who would make such a foolish request? Do you not remember what this God of Israel did to Pharaoh, in which he absolutely decimated his land? He poisoned the waters, turning them to blood. The earth itself became vermin and insects. Do we forget the death that he brought upon the cattle, the boils upon the human beings, how he controlled the atmosphere and caused an incredible storm with hailstones and fire and darkness? And what about the death of the firstborn and the splitting of the sea, the drowning of the Egyptians? And this was because of the evil and the cruelty perpetrated by Paro, and you're suggesting that we should decree to destroy the Jewish people? Haman responded, did we not see that Nebuchadnezzar destroyed the God of Israel's temple in Jerusalem? And he did nothing. This indicates that this God of Israel is old. He doesn't have the same strength he used to. And with that, Achashverosh and his sages came to an agreement, and Achashverosh issued the decree to have all the Jews destroyed. There's another medrash. Haman is invited to this party. Esther, the king, and Haman, the most selective list of invitations that we've ever known. 3 people. And wherever Haman would go, people would stop, they would bow, stop what they're doing. Haman was fabulously wealthy. Haman had so many sons and children. Haman had power, influence, fame, and wealth. And he comes home, and his wife Zeresh and his beloved confidant say, why do you have such a look of misery upon your face? And he says, everything that I have, all that I possess, all my glory and honor, it's not worth a thing to me when I see that Jew, that Mordechai, who absolutely refuses to prostrate before me. He stands erect with a smile on his face. And no matter what I have, it's worthless. I can't live. And they say, why don't you destroy Mordechai? Have him put to death. And Haman said, he is a righteous man. And we know how the God of Israel protects the righteous. After all, were Hananiah, Mishael, and Zion not thrown into a fire because they refused to bow to an idol of Nebuchadnezzar and they were saved? Was Daniel not thrown into a lion's den? Were the Jews not protected from drowning when the waters split and stood erect? Were they not protected from stoning when the hailstones during the plague of Borod came down and wouldn't touch them? Were they not protected from the wild beasts during the plague of the wild animals and the pestilence? And on Look how the God of Israel has saved them. Look how Isaac was taken by his own father and he put a knife to slaughter him. He put it to his throat and God protected him. I'm concerned about the hand of God. And Zeresh, Haman's wife, states and says, but you don't find anywhere in history that their God protected them from hanging from the gallows. And Haman said, you're right. And immediately Haman instructed, erect a gallows, 50 amas high. That's approximately 100 feet high. That's like the size of a skyscraper. And this way Haman said, wherever I am in the city of Shushan, I'll be able to turn and look up and see Mordechai hanging and dangling in the air, and I will feel refreshed, invigorated, and filled with joy. These are the two midrashim. I ask you, could there be anything more absurd, more ridiculous than what the recommendations are in these midrashim? How can we possibly issue a decree to destroy the Jewish people when look what their God has done, these all powerful, these almighty, the exodus of Egypt to demonstrate that he is in total control. And we're going to issue decrees against his children? What do they say? He's old. He's old. The God, the creator, the master, we're not talking about a human being, flesh and blood. This God, this metaphysical, eternal creator, a master, is going to age. And why? Well, this temple was destroyed. He did nothing. And what about the fact that his children were enslaved and lived a bitter existence, a life of moror for 210 years in Egypt? God did nothing. And yet we see that when the proper time came, God demonstrated his remarkable boundless love for the children of Israel. And he demonstrated that he is the one true creator and master of all that exists in the universe. So you see that God didn't respond when Nebuchadnezzar came. God has a plan. What kind of thinking, what kind of logic? And immediately upon hearing this, they say, oh, Haman's got a wonderful point. The God must be old. It is ludicrous. And here Haman is saying, his confidants, even his wife, that God has protected you righteous from all forms of death, but we don't find that he protected them from the gallows. And therefore, does that mean that he's incapable? Do we not see that God is in total control? And if he decrees that fire should not harm the righteous, then there's nothing to be concerned about. Water should not drown them. There's nothing to be concerned about. But because you didn't see God intervene by a hanging, so therefore you're going to draw these idiotic conclusions. Are we dealing with fools? These were incredibly wise, clever people. They were the ones who were maintaining the control and rule over 127 nations. You're talking about almost the entire continent of Europe entering into Asia. How do we comprehend this? The Alter from Kelm, Rabbi Simcha Zisel, Zechrono Livracha, tells us something that we know and something that we've studied many times. People hear what they want to hear. They see what they want to see. They believe what they want to believe. Anyone functioning with a clear, logical mind can understand how obviously ridiculous these arguments were that were presented by Zeresh, by Haman. But these people, in their heart of hearts, their hatred for the Jewish people was so great that they wanted to destroy them. They wanted to hang Mordechai. They wanted this. And therefore, they would cling at the most foolish statement and presentation. Their minds couldn't think clearly. They did not have a proper perception. We say in our davening on Shabbos, prior to Baruch Hu LaYesharim Nova Sehila, to those who can think clearly, praise is appropriate. The Jewish people were given the name, Yaakov was given the name Israel and Yeshurun. What does Yeshurun mean? From the word Yashar. Yashar means straight, clear. We're not distracted to the right, we're not distracted to the left, but we have the ability to think clearly, and not just Jewish people, every human being. But our nature, our character can influence how we think. A person who by nature is a power-hungry, corrupted individual will think corruptly. A person who is subject and enslaved by his own evil inclination and passions will not be able to see things clearly. They will see and they will comprehend what they want to see. Achashverosh, Haman, Zeresh, all of Achashverosh's wise sages, this is what they wanted. And therefore, they would cling and hold and grasp the most absurd presentation. God is old. God can't save from hanging. Idiotic. But this is how a person responds when they are entrapped by their evil inclination and their evil nature. But those who can think clearly, those who can reason clearly, those who understand that just because I feel this way, or I want this, or I think it's socially not right, or it's an injustice, doesn't make it right. It doesn't make it right. We have to be able to think and see clearly. Yashar v'yashar. Haman, Achashverosh, and all of their cohorts, they maintain that this God of Israel is no longer capable of performing miracles that defy the laws of nature. He's old, he can't do it. And the message of Purim is, we have the Megillah in which God's name is not found. Oh, it might be alluded to here and there, but open the scroll of Esther, you don't see God's name. It almost appears to be just a nice story, a nice play in which things unfolded, Act 1, Act 2, Act 3, in which things unfolded favorably for the Jewish people. The message of Purim and the Megillah is what we are, the mitzvah of reading the Megillah, to publicize. Publicize what? Not only is God in total control and will reveal his total control at the time that he determines, but God is in control of what we assume is nature. Not only can God perform the miracles that defy the laws of nature, God controls nature. As our sages tell us, there is no teva. There is no such thing as nature. Nature is nothing more than what we are accustomed to seeing, the handwork of God, his miracles that are clothed and concealed and masked within daily activities. The sun rising, a seed turning into a flower, food coming from the earth, grain, fruits, vegetables. It's an absolute miracle. The water vapor cycle, evaporation, it cools, it rains, an absolute miracle. Inhaling, exhaling, the trillions upon trillions of cells functioning in perfect harmony within the human body, an absolute miracle. We take it for granted. We call it nature. Purim teaches us there is no nature. It was God who is in control, who puts the thoughts into the mind, who all of a sudden caused Achashverosh to assume that Haman is getting a little bit too power hungry. Haman is a little bit too close and friendly to Esther. What is Haman doing here? They think that God is not in control. God is in control of every iota and every element of life. Therein lies the message of Purim, and therein lies the great, glorious crown of being called Yeshua, those who can think straight, those who can see clearly. Have a wonderful Purim, a Freilichem Purim, and hopefully, God willing, we should be limited to wearing masks on Purim exclusively. Stay safe and stay healthy. Stay happy and stay Jewish.